about the film, everything, the plot is simple enough, not difficult to understand, but maybe there's a scene which may be a little puzzling on first viewing is in the first half of the film, where the boy, when he's attending the ship, suddenly sees in the distance a man like a hunter shooting an arrow, and then he's gone, leaving the leaves just shuttering there. And I think everybody can have his or her own interpretation of the scene, but I'd like to hear what Mr. Kabore would like to say. What does that scene mean?
Yes, I think, because my opinion about that, because it's not necessarily the truth or the only truth, but to me it's the way that the young boy was imagining the death of his father, because he didn't know at all his father. So one of the real concerns he has is to understand how it happened that he didn't meet his father, you know. So he's trying to invent a story to explain how this father has disappeared, you know. It means also that we understand that it's a real absence, you know, for this boy, and it doesn't help the boy to construct its own identity and personality, of course, you know. And that was the way that I found to make a kind of incursion in his mind and imagination.
If you could just finish your story, you had promised us that you'd tell us why you couldn't see your own film. So maybe we could hear the answer to that.
No, it's a very simple story. That day, it was in September. If my memory is good, it was the 10th of September '82, first screening, you know, public screening of the film in Ouagadougou in a theater called Cine Volta, and that is a theater with 570 seats approximately, and the exhibitor has given to me 100 tickets, you know, to invite the people who worked with me and other guests. So I was in front of the cinema to welcome my guests, and when the screening was about to start, I presented myself in the gate of the cinema, and the gatekeeper asked me my invitation card or my ticket. I said, I have nothing, you know. And he said, then you cannot get in. And so I was intimidated, and I couldn't say, but I made the movie, you know. So I was there and hoping to someone to save me somehow, you know. And I heard the music of the beginning of the film starting, and after 10 minutes, someone came out of the cinema. He was the responsible of the theater, and he was angry against me. He said, but we said we wanted to introduce you, we called you, you were not there. We started the movie 10 minutes ago. I said, it's exactly the same duration that I was trying to get into the theater. So he turned to the man and he said to him, so he is an employee of this guy. He said, don't you know him? He's the one who made the movie. And the guy stared to me very suspiciously, you know, and he made that gesture that I cannot forget. He made this. So go inside. I know my chief is telling a funny story, I don't believe that you made that movie, but I am obeying to him. So I have been admitted as a clandestine to see my own movie in somehow. So, but to be frank, it was a good thing for me because I escaped to be pointed out as a responsible of that piece in case that they don't like it, so they know my face, you know. So finally the screening went very well, and when we were, you know, I was like anyone getting outside the cinema, and then two people in front of me started to speak about the movie, and the first one said, "But what is that movie?" And the second said, "Why you say that you didn't like it?" He said, "Yes, I like it very much, but why it is so short? As you know, it's only 1 hour and 10 minutes, you know." And the other guy said, "No, it's short because this is the first part of the movie. In the second part, the two kids are going to marry." So I was about to beat the shoulder of the guy to say, "Hey, I made the movie, no marriage, no sequel," and things like that. But again, I said, "Okay, you are anonymous in the crowd, just shut up, you know." But finally, 15 years later, I made a sequel, you know, as it predicted, you know. I didn't respect his will to say that they are going to marry because they are sister now, adoptive sister and brother, so they can't marry. But it's the reason why I always say that the audience is a very important partner of the filmmaker, you know. And I experienced it in a very, very singular way. And also I understood that I made that movie, I wrote the script. Of course, I invented the story of the movie. But because I am living in that culture, I have drawn myself all the substance of my story from my culture. So it's normal that people could recognize themselves and identify themselves to that story, and that is the best gift they could give to me, you know, if they feel that they were already owner of that story even before I invented it, you know. So that's a simple story, you know, of a filmmaker confronted for the first time to its audience. Yeah.
So it was your first feature film.
Yes.
And according to documentation, said it's also just the second film in your country, Burkina Faso. But it seems to be a third one. Is that right?
Yes, it was the third one. Yeah, because two films have been made earlier to my movie. One in 1973, you know, it was entitled "The Blood of Pariah People." You know, it's a story about this time the marriage between two young people, but they are separated because they belong to two different, you know, clans, you know, so they could not marry according to the social law, you know. So, and the second movie has been made in 1976, you know, and so mine is really the third one, you know, and it's important to correct that because sometimes also people present me like one of the pioneers of African cinema, what I am not at all, because many people were before me and they inspired me. So I like to just put history in order, you know, in somehow, yeah.
So it must be pretty hard to get the finance for a film to be shot in the country.
Yes, but in general in Africa it's not easy, you know. the film industry doesn't exist as such in most of the African countries, if you accept South Africa and Nigeria, you know, because in Nigeria today they are producing, you know, thousands of films every year. You know, we are Nollywood cinema, and you have other countries like Egypt, Morocco, and Tunisia that are in another, you know, level, and most part of the other countries, they are just at the beginning of, you know, the kind of birth of film industry, you know. And Burkina is really a country where it exists a political will to support filmmaking. Why that? Because we have a film festival that started in 1969 called FESPACO, which is the Pan-African Film Festival of Ouagadougou. Ouagadougou is the capital city of Burkina Faso. And that festival has really brought a very large awareness, you know, on filmmaking in Africa. And all the filmmakers on the continent would like very much to be in Ouagadougou to expose their movies. So for that reason, in Burkina, there is a kind of very positive attitude of the government towards cinema. And my film has been completely sponsorized by the government of Burkina Faso. So I didn't suffer a lot to get the resources to make that movie. But in general, it's not the case. And today, even in Burkina, because there are much more filmmakers, you know, a lot of projects, and unfortunately, the state could not support significantly all the projects, you know. So in that period of time, it has become more difficult to make, you know, fiction films, you know, and people are using digital, you know, cameras to make films, and they are made with very low budget, you know, and we need it because we need also to produce massively films because our audiences are starving to see their own stories on the screen. You know. So, but as I said, Burkina is a very particular place, and we are still fighting, me and my colleagues, filmmakers, to continue preserving a kind of easy access to film production. But it's not very easy today. You know, it has become more and more difficult because the government doesn't have a very large capability of funding the films, and the private sector is not yet developed. You know, the banks are not contributing significantly to production because our market is very, very narrow. You know, and you cannot expect high incomes from a movie. So all those different limitations make difficult the production of a big number of films every year in Burkina Faso. But we are at the moment trying to find new ways, you know, with new funds that the state could put in place to support filmmaking. And the festival is still continuing with a big success, and that constitutes also one of the key tool that we are using to continue, pushing the film industry, ahead. Yeah.
So could you say something about why this is a historical film? It's not the typical historical film. It's not necessarily about societies or countries or great individuals or whatever. It's just about an ordinary little boy.
Yeah.
So why is this historical? Is it historical at all?
No, it's not historical at all.
What about your training?
It couldn't come from me, to say that, but people are confusing a little bit. It's true that I studied history, and in a way, history brought me to cinema. Why that? Because I was, as an historian, I was trying to understand why the Africans are not in the position to write their own history. I was studying in Paris in the beginning of the 70s, and all my professors at the Sorbonne University were French people, and yet, to my view, we needed also kind of input of African historians, because I was not putting in question the honesty of the European historians, but I believe that we have also our own way of seeing things, and it's when I was in that all this kind of inquiry and reflection, I understood that cinema is an important tool, because I was living in Paris, watching the television, watching films in the theaters, and I couldn't accept all the prejudices and cliches on Africa that were still spread, yet we were already independent, most of the African countries, and the colonial period was over, but it was a kind of perpetuation of misunderstanding, I would say, the way that the Europeans were looking to Africa, to me, was wrong in many different matters. So I decided to go to a film school to learn the cinematic language in order to use it to make history more known by the Africans themselves, because we ignore our own history, and to me that was a weakness for Africans, not to know their own history. And most of the time people believe that the African history started only when the first explorers and discoverers, as they said, came to Africa. But today everybody knows that the history of all humanity started in Africa, because Africa is the cradle of humanity, and we like it or not, all people being in that room, we have the same and unique ancestor, if I want to be short, And this is important for the African to know that, but also for the other people in the world, So I went in that film school because I believe that I can use cinema as a way to diffuse in a larger scale history. And finally I discovered that to tell stories was also important. Why that? Because stories are dealing with the culture, are dealing with self-confidence. There are substances that we need to construct our destinies as an individual, as a society, as a country, or as a continent, in the case of Africa. So, at the contrary, I believe that history has helped me to fund my own reflection, you know, and then I'm using cinema to tell stories that nobody could tell except the Africans themselves. We need to reflect ourselves on the screen, not only the screen of, you know, cinema halls or television, but also on the screen of our own conscience, you know. So, again, I am not pretending at all to make historical movies. I don't say that I am against, it could be, but this one particularly is not at all an historical film. I say the story that you can understand in a very, at first sight, like a tale, African tale, and I try to match the traditional way of telling stories in Africa with the cinema way of telling stories. I succeeded or not, I don't know. You are the same judges for that. But in the same time, people could see a kind of parallel between my story of that boy with the story of Africa. You know, you can see a parallel between, you know, the night of colonialism, if you allow me to tell that, and the way that Africa is recovering its own speech. It doesn't resolve all the problems, you know, and still we have to learn how to build up our own world, you know. Is the only thing that relates my film to history, you know. And even though I decided that when you are a film maker, that is my conviction. I don't have to explain everything about my film. If you are using some symbolism, you don't underline the symbolism. In that case, it's no more any symbolism or symbol in your movie. So I don't want to be longer in my answer to your question. But to me, nobody has declared that When Kuli is an historical film. It's a wrong understanding if it is so.
I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about the use of music. I really like the different themes in the film and how they maybe relate to either the different characters or places, locations in the film.
Yeah, the music that I used in that movie has been composed by a musician from Burkina Faso, and by chance I met the composer when I was in the film school in Paris. He came in Paris after he traveled to US, where he has brought drummers, traditional drummers from my country, and they gave a concert at the St. Patrick Church in New York. And he has a tape of that music. He came in the student residence where I was in Paris, and he gave us the opportunity to listen to that music. And I've been very, very deeply impressed by this music. And to me, it was in 74, just my first year at the film school, And I said to myself, I didn't know that some traditional music of my country could give, such a complex composition, of a music and be scored by so many musicians, So to me, I said that is exactly what I would like to use in my first movie. 7 years later, when I completed my film in the beginning of '81, I tried to meet this composer, and I went to him with my script, and I said I want him to compose the music for my film, because I was about to start the shooting by the end of '81. So he accepted that, and when I finished the shooting, I brought him to Paris, where I was editing my film, because we do not have laboratories in Burkina Faso. So we like it or not, we had at that time, that period, to complete our films in Paris. And then he came in Paris when we were editing, and he will come every week to see the progress of the editing, and we continued discussing about the music. And then he made 3 hours of music for my film, because it was the first time he was composing for a movie, and he has put all his talent and gift in that. And I hired 12 musicians with a chief for the orchestra to play that music, and we used it the way that we did. And believe me, in my own country, people were so surprised that they say, your film is very interesting, but why you did use this foreign music? And I said to them, it's not a foreign music, it's the music of your homeland, It has been arranged differently that you use it to see, And then he went to the radio, and he explained his music, and people have understood that they have a very rich patrimony in terms of music, And you can hear that at the end I used the words, because all those themes of the music were pre-existing before I wrote the script, But I gave the possibility to this artist, to this composer, to also do something. And to me, my film is completely, linked to that music. The music is completely part of the story I am telling, And in Europe, of course, many people, they ask me, why did you use middle-age music? Middle-age in Europe, of course, in the understanding, in the African film. And I used it to be very radical, and I said, we got also middle-age in Africa. Believe me, It's so to me it has been a real, to my view, a real enrichment to my movie, and that music it has inspired me a lot, And after this first movie, my third movie, I used again the same composer for my third fiction film called Rabbi, And for the one I am writing just now, because in between, as you said, since '97, I haven't made another movie because I started a film school, and that film school is absorbing me a lot, But recently I met again the composer, and he said to me, because he is now very old, and he said that he will not have the energy to make a new music. So I am about to see how we can remix the music of Wenkuni to use it for the third part, of Wenkuni somehow, because I already made the sequel, Budiam, and I'm writing at the moment the third part of the film, because people are asking me, so the story is not yet completed, and as they did for the first movie, I am under very big pressure to make a sequel, and of course it's also a pleasure to me to do so, and I took a lot of time before I decided that it is possible for me to write a follow-up of the second piece.
To complete the trilogy, so to speak.
Yes, so it would be a triptych, yeah.
This is a very interesting story about the music. I'd like to ask, how about the cinematographer and the production crew? As you said, there is hardly an film industry in Burkina Faso. Did you get help from professionals outside your country?
Yeah. For Wenkuni, no, all the technicians were from Burkina Faso, and they have been one of them, the DOP, the director of photography, has been trained partly in France, yeah. But it was a challenge also for me. I wanted the whole movie to be handled and carried out by local team. So we have shot in 35mm, with equipment, owned by the state, and we have shot during 33 days to make that movie, but we couldn't shoot continuously because the two kids were at school, and I agreed with their parents that we couldn't interrupt their education, so we were mainly shooting during their holidays on Sunday, first day, because they don't have class. So we started the first day of shooting 15 October 81, and we ended the last day of shooting were the 17th February 82. And then I went to Paris for the editing, and the film has been completed in May, and the first real public screening took place in Cannes at the market in Cannes Film Festival. It's how the film has been discovered, and it has been invited in a lot of different festivals, even before it has been screened for the first time in Burkina Faso.
How about the actors? You mentioned the two kids who are studying. All the other adults, are they professional actors or amateurs?
No, they are all amateurs. Of course, the kids, because we don't have any conservatory of, actors in Burkina Faso. And for instance, the mother, she is working in the administration. She used to perform in radio plays,
Radio.
And radio plays. Yeah, and for some reasons, I didn't want to use all those people who are in the stage as amateurs, because it's very difficult, to make them reduce, the way that they were playing. So I took a long time to make my cast, and finally I think I've been lucky, and the husband, the father, is a professor of natural sciences, But even in my country, people believe they are asking me, who did you find this farmer? It's unbelievable because they all know one uncle or a father that looks like him. Very typical farmer, and they even don't know that he speaks French and he is teaching, natural sciences, and all those people are, and some are from the village, And what is very strange, when you go in a village in Africa and you start shooting, if you are able to establish a good communication with them, you explain why you are there, what you are trying to do, you need their help, then they will be very, very, helpful to you, and they understand very quickly everything, because in our societies, and it's how I understood also that in Africa in general, but I don't like to speak with generalities, but for this time it's very true, because of our very cultural specificities, like the funerals, the birth, every stage in the life of an individual is marked by one initiation or something like that. So people are used to live with rituals and rites, so they understand what is representation. There is the real life in the society, but there are moments in the life of individuals and the society where something is represented. So it's very close to cinema. So when you start explaining what you want to do, it's amazing how they understand and how they take, some responsibility in a way to help you achieving what you want to do. And just a funny story, one day we were rehearsing before shooting, and one baby in the crowd, in the marketplace, where I called a lot of people, and in every one of my movie during the shooting, my movies during the shoot, there is one day that I am about to run away from my stage because problems are so huge that you believe you never will achieve something. And that day, the marketplace, we started at 5 a.m. in the morning to select the people, to make sure that they don't come in the market with things that could not appear, because the film is taking place in the remote time. So around noon we were about to shoot, and then one baby was crying. The mother was in the market, and my assistant they did everything necessary to make the baby stop crying. I said, don't let him cry. If the mother is not able to handle that, we shall see what to do. And at the moment we were ready to shoot, there is to say silence in my local language, you say basibure. I cried basibure, and the baby was so surprised that suddenly everybody was quiet that he stopped crying too. And finally I couldn't shoot that take because my crew was laughing, by this unexpected silence, So finally, film is always bringing unexpected things, and I really learned a lot while I was shooting that movie, and I understood that I was the one making the movie, but I was part of a very big thing that is my society and my culture. And finally, they accepted what I was doing, and as I said earlier, the best gift I received from them is that recognition that I was working for them also, you know. That's very, very important.
Clearly, when Cooney was a mute, and he acquired speech, and I think that to some extent you were saying that you are speaking for yourself, the subaltern, etc. Now there was something voiceover part about rejection of colonialism, and yet I feel that the film is about this revelation. And that revelation is about something that is cruel and painful within the culture. And is that how you feel, that by learning to speak is also at the same time to be self-critical about your own culture?
Yes, I think that to be a filmmaker, I don't want to celebrate my culture or my society. I know that there are, there are oppressions, there are iniquities, there are, like in any society. And to me, making that movie, I speak also to my own people. I don't want to present a kind of idealistic Africa. It will be hopeless and useless, I would say. But in the same time, there are good sides and bad sides, like in any society, And to me also, what was important is to show that, paradoxically, the women are playing a very, very crucial role in my movie. While you can hear in the media or read in the press that in Africa, the women are completely, left behind, and it's partly true. But in the same time, in that society, the women are playing a very important role. And as you can see, in Wenkuni, the story couldn't exist if the mother didn't decide to run away from the first village, because she believed her husband was still alive, and she didn't want to marry another man until she lose the hope that he will come back. So that is the starting point of the story. In the same time, in the second village where she has been accepted, the day that some difficulties happen, she has a foreigner. She is seen like the guilty people. She has been accused to be a witch. And then she's again chased out that village. And thirdly, one person that has been very important for the boy was his adoptive sister, being, of course, a woman, and also the one that is going to revolt against her husband, that will push this guy to hang himself, and the boy will recover the possibility to speak, and so on. So it was also a way to reestablish something that is completely misportrayed, by Western people, because they don't know exactly the truth. Of course, we have to fight for a better liberation of women, because there is still a lot to do. But in the same time, even in the empires and the kingdoms in the remote time in Africa, we got some queens in Africa that have been very important, So I am just putting some elements to enlarge the awareness about, the reality of the African societies. because we say Africa, but we know that there are many different cultures in Africa, but we have a kind of common background that is very, very strong, of course. It's the reason why I can say Africa, but I know that, you know, there are a very wide diversity inside Africa itself.
The usage of the voiceover in a very impartial, neutral tone, which is very much in tune with the entire mood in the film, in spite of a lot of violence and tragedy in the film, but it is told in a very tranquil, calm, and way. I don't know the addition of the voiceover. Is it somehow related to the strong oral tradition in your country, in your culture?
To me, when I was writing the script, I wanted really to see how far I can invest, you know, in my movie, the traditional way of telling stories, where there is a narrator telling the story, you know. So it was really part at the beginning of my intention in writing the story. So to me, it came naturally that I needed a voice from time to time to be the guide, to understand what was happening in my story, particularly when it has to speak about the inside world and feelings of the boy, you know, of course, you know. So I didn't. It hasn't been problematic for me to use that, because myself I has been raised up inside that culture, you know. I in my family house in Ouagadougou, my grandmother was living there, so we had in the same time the city and the village, you know, and I just 3 meters to do to be in the world of the village with my grandmother being there and witnessing everything, and she has been very important in during my childhood, you know. I was born, she was already at home. She is the father of my father, the mother of my father, because I didn't, I haven't known no one of my grandfathers, you know, the father of my mother and the father of my father. I didn't, they passed away before my birth, you know, so I couldn't meet them in somehow. So my grandmother, the 2 of them, have been very important for me, but the one that was living in the same compound with me was the mother of my father, and her name is Poco, and she has been very, very important in my education, because we were going to the modern school, but also at house, in the house we had also the education of our tradition, you know. So it was so natural for me to do the movie the way I did it, you know, that it didn't appear to me like I was doing a kind of aesthetic choice, you know. It was natural to me to use the voice of the narrator, you know, like I did it in the sequel of When Kuni Again, while in my 2 other films I didn't use it because it was not relevant to the type of the stories of Samboko, my second fiction film, and the 3rd one, Rabbi.
How you see film as such an important tool to make one country's history? Because to some people, film is just a film. It isn't real, it isn't not true. We can't remake history. So, Can you share with us your view?
Yes, I try to retrace how I went to filmmaking from history, you know, and of course I am making my films with the hope that the film could serve to help Africans, and particularly my society, the people in my country, to repossess themselves, to be able to rebuild, you know, their own culture, to start a kind of renaissance, you know, and to rebuild their identity. Although I don't like too much the word identity, because for me, identity is not a place where you go back, you know. It doesn't exist. Identity is something that is dialectical, you know. Every day you are in somehow renewing your identity, you know, to my view. But in that process of permanent reconstruction, I think that it's important that you know from where you are coming. And if you know from where you came, then you can define where you want to go. Otherwise, it's difficult, you know. And someone said, when you no more know where to go, first go back from where you came. And then you can again plan another trajectory somehow. I think that is a very interesting way how you build the present with some material of the past, you know. And I also believe that sometimes I see people opposing tradition and modernity. I can understand in a way, but in the same time, for me, modernity of today will become tradition of tomorrow. You know, it's how it works, you know. So we all need to have traditions, because it's the soil on which we stand up to reinvent ourselves every day, you know. If you don't have any ground under your feet, you cannot stand up, you know. And to me, film is a tool that could help the people who have caused recently some trauma, like slavery, like colonialism, and they need first to reconnect the threads, you know, of their history, you know, and be able to start a new stage in their in the construction of their self-confidence. That's very important. But of course, I am not naive. I don't believe that film will bring the revolution, or film is a tool to transform the reality. No, I believe it contributes, because as I said earlier, story is a substance that we badly need, every one of us, because it helps us to understand, or at least to question ourselves, the simple question, why we are on that earth, you know, who are we? And I think that question, who are we, is a kind of dynamics that help us to continue, you know, working, you know. And I believe filmmaking, one could think that it is a luxury for countries like Burkina Faso, you know, because we have so many problems to confront too, you know, health, education, you know, are very, very important issues. Although we need film, because film is not just entertainment. It deals with deeper elements, you know, like imagination, like visions, like you know, and we need all this substance to be able to continue, you know, the invention of our humanity, and we need the diversity in the world, you know, and my belief, my faith is that we are all interdependent, you know. That's my belief, and you see, I have crossed a lot of very big distance to be here with you, and we are speaking about film, and you have led a lot of concerns, and to be here in that room, it means that what we are doing is not just entertainment, it goes beyond that, you know. We are speaking about us, you know. We are speaking about what drives us, you know, to believe that our lives are valuable in a way, and in a very modest and humble way. I like to contribute with my films, you know, and also I had that opportunity to make a craft that I like very much, you know, and this is something that I appreciate, you know. It's with a lot of frustrations sometimes, but it's part of life, of course.
So, actually, you mentioned about you started the film training school, Imagine, in 2005, and you have been heavily involved in doing that, giving you much less time to do your own film. On the other hand, you said you've mentioned in interviews that there's hardly a distribution system for local films in your own country, and not to talk about industry. So has that situation changed after, for example, the Imagine setup?
Yes, unfortunately, I think that Imagine has been created to help, you know, addressing those issues. In my country, for instance, we only have more or less 30 cinema halls functioning for 16 million people, you know, in a country of 274,200 kilometers square, you know. So it means that it's very few theaters, you know. Although we know that the audiences are very fan of the movies, you know, and since 10 years with the new digital films made with low budget, we can see, you know, crowds and crowds, you know, going to see the films. So it means that people need, you know, to see their own images. That's very important. Is the reason why I have decided to create that school that started 10 years ago. We celebrate the 10 years anniversary of Imagine, and Mete, that is professor at Lingnan University, was attending the festival and also helping, you know, mentoring the students at Imagine Film School. I think that cinema is really important. I don't say that it's the most important matter, you know, but we need it, because when we are speaking about filmmaking, it's not only for fiction but also documentary, for television, and television is also a very powerful tool of socialization of the people, you know, and it could be used in a very clever way to help the Africans to overcome the problems and to develop themselves, both materially but also spiritually, you know, because we are both mind, souls, and flesh and bodies, you know, and we need to give answers to all relevant issues that we are facing, you know. And to me, to educate young people in filmmaking is also to help them bringing more awareness in the society about the richness that we have. And most of the time in Africa, and you can hear it at the radio or see it at the television, how many young people are dying in the desert or in the seas because they want to cross and go to Europe, you know, because they are more or less hopeless, you know, about Africa. But I believe that it's not a fate, it's not a bad luck to be born in Africa. At the contrary, there are a lot of challenges, but we have the resources to overcome, you know, and to meet those challenges. And we need to learn ourselves about our capacities, and to me, our imagination and our culture are some of the tools we have to use to change that reality, and to be able to start a kind of renaissance of Africa. It's not against anyone, it's for us, but I believe it's also for all humanity, because we need each other. As I said earlier, we are all interdependent, you know, and I hope that you know, cinema, filmmaking is participating to the invention of a better world, you know. Maybe I am a dreamer, but I'm not the only one, as John Lennon said in his famous song Imagine, you know.
I think it's a very beautiful film in terms of, in many ways, like natural scenes and the very profound, very natural acting. And but it reminds me of a very significant difference, because I think this film is not setting any specific historical or societal context. So for an audience who has little knowledge about African, I would probably take it as a film that still made today. There's no proof for me to think it's made like many years ago. But what impressed me most is that the people in this film, they all seem very sort of satisfied with their life. Although they have different daily problems, but we can tell that they are very satisfied with their life. And I compared this with many the films from mainland China, many Chinese films I've seen, that we always see people, their struggles. They are struggling very hard about life, about their everyday living. It seems that people are influenced so much by the increasingly capitalist society today. But the people here in these films, they are not. They are quite content. So my question is, if you are making a film, just the same story today, would that film still the same as we see today? Would people there still so happy and content with their life today? This is actually a question I'm asking about whether this is a part of the African culture, that no matter how the world is increasing globalization, but in essence and in some part, we are just African, we are ourselves, we are not so easily to be influenced. Thank you. Sorry, it's a bit complicated.
No. It's no. I think it's more a comment than a question, and I don't pretend that I have a answer for any question. You know, I always say that I made a movie, but the movie belongs to anyone that have seen it. You know, you can take possession of the movie and find some of the answers to your own questions. But to me, first, I would say that I didn't make kind of film full of nostalgia. You know, it's not the what I wanted to do. But you are right. When you see the movie, there is a kind of peace, despite of the crisis that, you know, that take place in the movie, because when you are you know, rooted in your own culture, you have to my opinion, you have the necessary resources to meet the problems that you have, you know, and of course today we are more in societies of belonging, you know, of I would say of having, instead of being in societies of being, and that is the problem, you know, when the lives, the value of lives are calculated on what you have, how many cars per habitant, how many fridge per habitant, how many, and so on, you know. So we are more and more stocked and calculated in terms of quantity, in terms of figures, you know, instead of being seen like human beings with, of course, some quests, you know, because what is important in life is the quest for what is essential to our lives, you know. I'm not a philosopher. I don't pretend that I can teach anyone, but I am just trying to say to myself that I would like at the end of my life not to be judged on the amount of the richness I have been able to collect, but to be judged in other things, you know, how I have been useful to my society in a way. What did I do? Who have I counted how did I succeeded to make my life significant, you know, and it's what, but I don't have any answer. And today you were asking me if I can do the same film. Yes, I think that a story giving you the feeling that you got from Wenkuni could still be done today. It doesn't mean that there are no problems in Africa. There are a lot of problems. It doesn't mean there are no problems in Hong Kong, but you can present also some good sides of life, because we have the two faces of the metal, you know, always, you know, and it depends what you want to underline in a movie, you know. So I'm just contributing. I don't say that I have an answer to what you are saying, but I think that we should not just make pessimistic films, but we cannot also restrict ourselves to making optimistic films, because life is more complex than that, you know. And in Wenkuni, although you feel a kind of peaceful atmosphere, you see that there are dramas. You have people losing their lives. You have a boy with a very difficult, you know, childhood, and it's always that, you know, it's a mixed elements of happiness and you know, and sorrows and frustrations, and I think that is part of life. You know, it's you know, my second film, Zamboko, were speaking about the you know, the cities in Africa, how it grows and it kills the farmers' culture, because they are losing their land and the city is growing and growing. New values have come out, you know, money, power, you know, and most of the time politicians, business people are associated to exploit the rest of the people, you know. So I spoke about that, and when I made that movie 6 years after Wenkuni, some of the people said to me, "Oh, Gaston, we preferred Wenkuni. It was more glamour and things like that." I say, "But we have all those things today also, you know, and I have to speak about also this thing." And many of my friends who have even played as extras in my film, they were very, you know, uncomfortable in front of Zamboko, you know, because they have seen themselves in that movie, you know. So someone said, you know, being a scriptwriter, that to be a scriptwriter is to lose a lot of friends, because sometimes you write stories and they recognize themselves and they say, "We didn't know that he could be so rude to us," you know. But it's part of any art thing. Those who are novelists or musicians or whatever, you know, they are sometimes going to depict, you know, the reality, and sometimes it's painful, of course, you know.
Actually, it's almost time, but I would just like a short, very simple question just to clarify. For Wenkuni, when the local audience in your country saw it, it will be clear to them that it was set in the past, in the colonial days, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But it's only not clear to the foreigners.
Yes, yes, it's clear. It's clear. But today you can go in the very remote villages, it looks like that, you know. And you know, when I made that movie, I was exhausted with the fact that as soon as you speak about Africa, you have some paradigms being there, and everything is completely spoiled by the colonization, and it's like the Africa didn't exist for millenniums before the colonial period, you know. Is the reason why I made that movie in the remote time with our own problems, but of course it's a kind of metaphor in the reality of today, because as you said, the same movie could be done today. The houses will change a little bit. You will see bikes, motorcycles, cars, but what will change really? What is the essence of human relationships hasn't changed. There are still oppressions, exploitations, misunderstanding, prejudices, cliches, you know, and things like that. And it's all about human beings, you know, anytime, anywhere in the world, you know.
So So thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Kabore.